All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Off the Clock. Nope. OTC. Hold on. I forgot my vocal exercises.
This is OTC After Hours, where entrepreneurs unwind, talk real, and grow together.
Welcome back, everyone, to the OTC After Hours podcast. Today, we have a shorter, very long episode because we have a hard out, Brian.
Not just me, man.
I'm just kidding. We all have lives.
Yeah, we have businesses to run off the clock.
Tens of you should be very thankful.
Yes.
That we are sharing our knowledge from some of the past meetings of
we
the
learned
Off the Clock networking group. Let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. Alex, you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Alex Donnolo. I'm a commercial real estate investor, coach, and consultant, and public speaker, leader of teams, husband, father. Grateful to be here.
Nice.
I'm Brian Horan, local financial professional, reader of many leather-bound books.
Mahogany,
and I have a dog named Baxter. I'm just kidding. I have a dog named Scooter.
Oh,
That's enough for today.
starting off with lies.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm Brandy Cree. I'm a local realtor here in Coeur d'Alene, as well as I moonlight in the insurance industry as well. And thanks for letting me attend.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here.
And I'm Connor DeVries. I'm a financial advisor as well, and a day trader as well. And yeah, it's my first time on the podcast as well. Very happy to be here. So.
I'm Travis. I'm your host. So today's topic, we are going over how to create a team, how to choose the right people for the right jobs, and also how to create the environment, the culture in your companies that keep those people in those positions happy and satisfied. It's a big topic. We tried to shove it all into one meeting.
It took two.
But yeah, some great talks at that meeting, and I'm really excited to discuss it here.
Yeah.
Alex, why don't you go over your initial impressions on the meeting, some of the stuff that was said, and then maybe how you go about hiring the right people for the right jobs.
Yeah, so it was great. If you haven't been to one of the Off the Clock networking groups yet, I highly recommend it. Bunch of business professionals, like-minded individuals, smoking cigars and talking shop. And so, yeah, at the last one we talked about company culture and, growing teams. And I would say my biggest takeaway, honestly, was just, I think there's two components that can either make or break culture. And, the first one I would say is clarity, like having clarity in the role, the person that you're hiring before you even get to the hiring process, like having at least 80% clarity, the 80-20 rule. Have it 80% built out, build out the other 20% as you onboard the person. And so, for me, that's the biggest thing that will kill culture is if people don't have clarity in the role, what their goals are, what their KPIs are. So it's pretty simple, just outlining very clear metrics, being very comprehensive and thorough in the job outline, what role they play, what your vision is for them, what their growth plan is, not just their starting pay, but what's their growth plan, how can they grow and level up within the organization. And the other one is trust, so there's easy ways to maintain trust as a leader. The biggest one is it's simple, pay commissions on time, right? Mm-hmm. Do the things you say you're going to do, lead by example. If you want your team to honor their word, then you as a leader need to honor your word. Mm-hmm. And it's scientifically proven. There's been studies the biggest thing that kills culture and makes a team not autonomous, not driven, not motivated is just lack of clarity, lack of trust. Mm-hmm. So,
and that starts at the beginning, setting that expectations when you're looking to hire somebody. How many years did it take to create the SOPs for yourself for company culture within your team? Because you guys have a pretty large team now, right?
Yeah, we've got 27 direct reports essentially throughout the leadership team. So our executive team, there's 4 of us, and then we have another 23 individuals on the team between sales and management and administrative. we're still building out the SOPs. Been at this for 8 years, still figuring it out. We have business coaches. We're always learning. We're reading books. And that's the 80-20 rule right there. With any business idea, like, you're never going to have it perfect. You should have an 80% idea of where you want to go, what you want to create. The other 20%, you build it as you go, and I think that goes with building a team. You learn through experience. And so
trial and error.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, reminds me of our next topic, you're never done learning.
Never.
Yeah. I've been hired at a few different jobs in my day. And not every position, something that came up in the meeting was not every position has to be a perfect hire. Some jobs are just jobs that need to get done. And what I found really interesting was some people emphasize like character above all. And the person needs to be just that winner from the very beginning. That really, for like a sales position, that's great. You need somebody who's charismatic, who is driven, who will face rejection and keep going as hard as they would any other day. While some people, there's very cerebral positions where you have to have them have that specific skill set and be driven, but it might not matter how charismatic they are if they're able to execute the way they need to do. And something you brought up in how you hire was having them actually take a personality test. Yeah. I don't think that's for every business, because some businesses, unless you think that everybody should be that detailed. I think maybe they'd keep longer employees if they fit them. But I think that that's pretty interesting that you define the position first. You do your work before you ask people just to throw their hat in the ring. And then you have them explain if they weren't a perfect match for the types of personalities you need in that position. You have them explain, why aren't you? Do you still want the job? How would you work on these things within yourself so you are a good fit? Yeah. You want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, I think it boils down to the clarity component. Not only do we build out a job outline as to what the role entails, but we, preordain what we believe the perfect DISC profile is. So we use the DISC test. There's lots of personality tests. The DISC test is great because it breaks it up into 4 categories. D, which is dominance, people who are visionaries, good leaders. Those are good in leadership positions, obviously. A lot of CEOs and founders are often high on the D because they're the visionary with the idea. High I, means they're relationship driven. They're people pleasers, right? And so those people are good in sales. They're good with customer service. And then you have C, which is stability, S, which is stability. So people who are reliable, consistent, pragmatic, and then C, which kind of goes with the S, compliance, people who are data driven, they're systematic, right? So those S and C's are good in administrative roles, right? Repetitive work, task oriented stuff. People who need to be leaders and visionaries within the organization. So a COO or, someone in a management position, you want them higher on the D so that they can lead teams, hold people to budgets and timelines, aren't afraid to speak up. People who are high I are usually, like I said, good at sales. And, you're not just determining whether someone's going to be good at the role, but whether they're going to be fulfilled in that role, because that's arguably more important. Because you want someone to stick around because they're fulfilled. And if they're fulfilled, then they're going to perform and they're going to like their job and you're going to have less turnover. So,
because if they lose their passion right away because they're doing something they're not fit to do. I've worked jobs like that, right, where I was efficient with what I needed to do. It was not my passion. I was not very good at that job naturally. I still took the time to be able to execute what I needed to do to have it be, up to standards. But I was working as a cook with my dad at Beverly's here in town. And I was just doing the salads, and there wasn't a lot, that it's the bottom rung of the thing. Well, he's making the steaks, but he just does this thing. He just kind of dances, puts the steaks on, presses them down. He just kind of flows through the kitchen, and there's a big smile on his face as he's doing it. He's in his own world, and he's just he has that love for it, this natural talent. is that. And he's been there he's been there for 40 years now. He could be head chef. He doesn't want to babysit. He's not interested. He just wants to do his dance and make his delicious food. Mm-hmm. And our family doesn't mind it because we eat pretty well. For me though, I'm like every single second just to make a passable salad. I was like panicked all the time. I was having nightmares was sleeping thinking about work. Oh, the tickets are piling up. They're so upset. They're mad at me. Oh, we ran out of dishes. I did not have that natural talent for that job, but I still applied myself because a job's a job. You got to make money, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of that journey is finding what your talents are and getting into that position. But yeah.
Well, and I think that's a prime example of why the DISC test is so important. And I would argue that most business owners should use those in the onboarding process because it's, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, right? So I would imagine you're probably high on the D, right? Because you're a visionary, a founder, a creator. And it's like, I would argue, like, that's a unique industry where when you're hiring for the restaurant industry, you need someone who's good at making food, right? But I would argue that that's probably someone that's high on the S and the C, someone who's good at attention to detail, following systems and checklists, right? And us Ds aren't good at that. We aren't good at being put into a box. We want to create the box, right?
Yeah. I think that they'd be better at either managing the restaurant, coming up with concepts, and then having the chefs fulfill their role.
Yep.
Or, creating the restaurant to begin with, and then putting people of those talents in and having them create their own system and follow through with it. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. How about you guys?
Oh, I was just thinking, just kind of piggybacking off of that. Just my last role was I was training independent insurance adjusters. So, and I just looking back, being a little bit more deliberate about putting them through some kind of personality test, because so much of that job was you got to be able to improvise, because we were adjusting all kinds of stuff. So planes, train cars, utility equipment, and there was a level of creativity and confidence with ambiguous situations that is a personality thing more than a technical skill, I would think. And I think when we hired, we didn't pay enough attention to what kind of personality are we looking for rather than what kind of technical know-how. Obviously, you can't hire somebody who knows everything about planes, knows everything about utility equipment, knows everything about passenger view. It was a personality problem that we had in hiring.
Yeah.
It was not a technical skills problem, and it would have been a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and we use the style, kind of similar to the DISC personality test too. So it's very helpful from entry level to even executive. But it also helps us navigate even communicating with people. It even helps us navigate just if they're in the right seat. If this isn't their passion, well, we might have something over here that would be their passion, and we can help steer, the ship with that. So
yeah, we've done that countless times. We interview someone for a sales role. Their resume looks great. They say they would be passionate about it. We see their DISC test and we say, honestly, I think you'd be a better fit over here. And then the light bulb goes off for them, and they're like, that checks the box more.
Yeah, I think doing the due diligence of actually paying attention to the people that you're hiring. Because I think when a corporation becomes so large, they just don't care. People are just numbers.
Yeah.
And they've optimized their system where they will just let you go. And that kind of ties into the culture thing. Because, I've worked in a couple places where you'd watch managers just get sacked like every couple months. And if you are a lowly dishwasher and your boss's boss is just gone over and over and over, it's like, okay. I fully understand that I'm replaceable because they made way more than me and they made way more important decisions than me. If I drop this plate, who knows? I might just be gone.
Yeah.
And that is just feeling constantly under threat of losing your job, or feeling like they don't care about you at all. You're just there as a cog in the machine.
Right.
Yeah.
That culture, it really pulls away from any growth, like you said, trying to set people up so they have goals and aspirations. Their own value can be associated in the company, and they feel fulfilled in their job, in their life. You see a lot of companies, especially once they get so big, without good management, good critical thinking managers, then you're setting up a culture that just
Well, it
only
plays
cares
into
about
the
profit.
trust component, right? If you can't even trust that you're going to keep your job or that your job will be there tomorrow, it's hard to stay motivated,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to perform because
Absolutely.
you're like, why am I even here? You know?
If you think you're like one mistake away from losing your livelihood, it makes it hard to like go above and beyond. You know, minimum wage, minimum effort, unfortunately, is a culture that's been created in the employee world, and
And perpetuated.
and it takes a special culture. You know, say what you want about Chick-fil-A, say what you want about In-N-Out. They've created a culture to where people are happy to come to work. There's a culture there that promotes growth. And they know that what they do, from the person who cuts and washes the the potatoes for the fries, to the person who's on the grill, to the person who's at the register, they know they're a valuable part of it.
Yeah.
And not as replaceable as if I was just manning the fry station at McDonald's.
Yeah.
That's a good, valuable, foundation to build there, because, that support, that longevity with that is what's going to be key to make you not only successful, them successful, your company successful, but it gives that sense of empowerment as well. I always really strive to let, if you're even in the mailroom, what it is that you're doing. If you're just out, canvassing, for me to do, solicitations or anything like that, what your part is and what your valuable, cog in that whole thing, as you said, would be there. And it's very extremely valuable with all that.
I think a mistake a lot of people at the top make is they misconstrue the value of fear being the same as having someone who respects the structure, respects their bosses, and is disciplined with their work. They try to create a culture of fear, so they think if everyone just falls in line, they're afraid of losing their job. You have the carrot there, the paycheck, and you have the fear of losing that paycheck, and they lean into it at a large corporate level, I think, way more than they should.
Yeah.
Because they think that power they get by having their employees afraid of losing what they have, losing their 401k, losing their insurance, their livelihood, needing to try to find a job in this type of economy.
Yeah.
And I was going to say it's a lose-lose situation, right? Because, not only do you have someone on your team who's scared to do their job, scared to make a mistake, but now you can't truly buy back your time, because now you're always going to be the bottleneck, right? If you have a team that's not autonomous, empowered, and they're afraid to speak up, then they're always going to rely on your guidance, your SOPs, you laying the track for them. Some of the best, most innovative ideas come from people on your team. So having that open pool of dialogue and having people not afraid to speak up and make mistakes.
And if they have no ownership over what they do and no fulfillment in it, then what's the point? Like they will never work as hard as.
And you'll constantly have high turnover.
And I do think that is a thing that small business owners struggle with, where it's their baby. They have a way that they do it that works really well, and they really do have a hard time trusting people to get to do it well, even if it's not the same way that they themselves would be doing it. And I actually had this with my last boss. I was probably 8 months in. I was contemplating quitting. I felt like I was always behind, was not making people happy. And I happened to run into his wife at the mall. And she goes, "We are so glad you're working for us. My husband would be at his wit's end if he was doing this by himself. And, you're like the fifth person he's tried to hire, and he's so glad this is working out." And I'm like, I'm listening to something, and I thought he hated me.
Would have been nice to have heard that a while ago.
Well, not only that, and
This is working out?
and at that point, I realized, I think this system we have where he was being the bottleneck, he was looking over, I was sending him my stuff, and he was looking it over, and he was critiquing it. And I went home, and I thought about it, and I thought, if I'm going to stay here, I got to be trusted a little bit more. And I just picked a Monday, and I said, from here on out, I'm just not, he can trust me. I know what I'm doing now. He's great at this. He's imparted that skill set to me. I'm not going to send him anything. And we met for board games. I don't know how many days later. And he looks over at me and he goes, "So how are things going? I haven't heard from you." And I go, they're going very well. And we just had this moment of, he knew where I was coming from. And it was just kind of this unspoken agreement. All right, I'm going to let you do your thing. And he got a lot more out of me because,
Yeah.
you know, there was not that bottleneck anymore. I was trusted to and I, of course, if I had questions, I came to him. But yeah, bottleneck overnight, gone. So
Yeah.
much more productive.
Well, you're a professional. That's what he's paying you for.
Yeah,
He needs to have
and I
that
totally
trust.
sympathize with him. I mean, he had a way that worked that was very details oriented. I'm not quite as much of a details oriented guy, and the feedback I was getting from the people I was working with is that they weren't reading all the details I was sending them. They were looking for the bolded dollar figure at the bottom of the page to tell them how much they could pay, and I'm killing myself, you know, covering all these bases, and I do need to know this stuff. I do need to have this ready if they ask for it. But
Maybe I can streamline it.
yeah, I'm streamlining things a little bit, and you know, if there's a problem, and you know, I'll answer for it. But you've trained me how to do this. I'm going to do it. And
and you solve two problems at once. You
Yeah,
save, you
I
save
saved him time, yeah.
and yourself time.
Yeah.
And that's something that we talked about a lot over the last couple of weeks of Off the Clock was how you create systems that are supportive of your own employees where they have the ability to make improvements in their own role. Because if you are so tightly strung into this is the structure, there is nothing better, we are the end all be all best thing ever, never change anything.
Well, I think that's going to piggyback off what Connor said is that it sounded like there was it was a personality driven business. He wanted you to be him. Like from a
yeah,
detailed
and
standpoint.
again, yeah, exactly. But and I don't blame him because what he had going worked. He was very
And
successful.
we talk bottlenecks, we talk this. I think some small business owners or even bigger companies, because like, you know, coming from my food service background and even what I've learned in finance now is that you can have a personality driven, business or organization, or you can have a leadership driven. You want it led by the team. You want to empower, you know, lift up ownership or give ownership like that. Because I know coming from food service that one of the things they wanted their team members to do from management down in each store was to challenge the process, bring up ideas, talk through new ways to do things. There's nothing worse for culture than to ask for something and to smack it down the minute that it rises up.
Right.
That's like,
Very
that is a buzzkill because then now people are going to go, because I'm somebody that I would have stayed in food service if I knew that there was a way for me to grow. Because I started at 18, just, you know, making pizzas and rolling dough and worked myself up to a general manager. And I knew I didn't want to do that forever, but there was no path for me to get into like district manager or anything like that. And it was like, shut up and be happy you have a job. I worked through the whole 2008, 2009 housing crisis, the financial collapse in food service. And they dangled that carrot of, you're lucky you got a job. And I was like, yeah, you're lucky I'm running this for like pennies on the dollar. You know what I mean? So like, it's just this weird thing. And it was stuff like that that make the entrepreneur step out, you know, and like sometimes the entrepreneurs, the visionaries, the doers, all that, they're going to use, not in a bad way, they're going to use the environment that you have as a stepping stone. And that's all part of, you know, of the equation. But we've got to be able to have a culture that allows that, but at the same time allows the space for the people. Like, that's just a job that has to get done. And we have to walk that line of both, but also not have it be, it's my way or the highway.
Right.
You know?
Well, them feeling comfortable enough to actually suggest solutions to things, feeling comfortable enough to have that dialogue on ways to improve things. If they're actually coming to you with like, hey, I'm noticing this thing we could do better, then, and you know, first challenge to overcome is for them to even feel comfortable enough saying that.
Right.
Second challenge to come is to not like dismiss them completely and tell them, no, I already taught you how to do that.
Right.
And then the third is to actually try it, be open to trying it,
Right.
and then have it be a learning moment where they are thanked and celebrated for trying to improve your company, but then they understand, oh, well, okay, so that's why this other way is more efficient. Because if you have people actively trying to make things better within your company, they don't need to do that. That's not even part of their job necessarily. But that is something that if you have a team that's thinking and not just filling a role, that is huge. And that goes from the moment you hire to the culture that they are living in.
Well, and it's scientifically proven, right? That right there is the single greatest determining factor of a successful team. Because Google did a study, I think it was called Project Aristotle, where they did a case study and they looked at all their performing teams, their best performing teams, compared them to their worst performing teams, and they all had, hypotheses that, it's going to be their who has the most degrees, who has the most experience. It boiled down to what they called psychological security, which means people weren't afraid to make mistakes and they weren't afraid to speak up. And that literally determined the highest performing teams throughout Google's history.
Wow.
That right
Believe
there.
it.
Yeah.
When I think as a leader too, you need to show that you're vulnerable. You need to show that you also fail. Sometimes you don't have the best, advice or the best solution to it.
For those of
well,
us
too.
that do fail, though.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
All of us
I don't
do.
think
We
anyone
wouldn't be
else
All
here.
get lumped into that category.
That's a foreign concept for Travis. That's an F word that he's not a fan of.
Oh, that's okay. I live with a non-failure either.
Well, if you truly embrace failure and learn from your mistakes, you never really do fail, right?
Right? Yeah.
No,
See,
it's
all how
true.
you think
You
about
have
it.
to that creating that comfort level is what's so extremely important. And my team can come to me with anything. I'm always not, hey, the end all. I know it. This is my idea. I shoot it out there and say, hey, I'm thinking about sending this out. What's
Yeah.
everyone think about this? Or we get together and collaborate about it. It's
Having a level of
Yeah.
humility as the leader of a team is
Absolutely.
really, really important, especially that you've kind of shown that to the people that are following what you've set out for them to do.
yeah.
It humanizes you, but it allows them to feel they can actually communicate with you. That's a really good point.
Have you read the book, The Culture Code?
I have not read it, but I just picked it up.
A book
Yeah.
you haven't read?
I know, right?
By the way, these guys are starting the book club.
Well, so in that book,
Shameless plug.
they talk about a famous Navy SEALs commander who, anytime he would meet with his men, he would rip his patch off. And he would say, best idea wins. I'm not going to pull rank. Like, just because I'm your commander doesn't mean I have the best ideas, right? And it led to a high level of success.
Smart.
I do think there can be, just to play devil's advocate, I think there can be a transitionary period too where, a new hire, again, especially for a small business where margins are pretty low and you can't really afford a mistake. There's nothing wrong with setting an expectation that, look, I know what I'm doing. You don't. Here's how we're going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if that becomes, and I think that is kind of how I wound up in my situation is that, that should have been, that was the right foot to start off on. But there needs to be a reevaluation of the relationship at certain points where there's a point at which trust has been earned, and it shouldn't be the default to stay in that, because then you haven't really done yourself any favors if you're constantly supervising this guy. Why hire him in the first place?
Right.
So I think there's some deliberate reevaluation that probably needs to be built into a process like that, where you can't let yourself become comfortable with having somebody who's you look at as permanently new, if that makes sense.
Well, I think learning from the mistake is the key distinction there. It's like, okay, we made a mistake. What did we learn from that? What are we going to do differently? As a good leader and a coach, you ask questions. Okay, what went wrong here? What are we going to do differently? And if it keeps repeating, obviously,
then you got a problem.
then you got a problem.
Well, yeah, and then following the process of loosening the grasp on that role. If it's a really important role, you did hire them to do it. Like you shouldn't have to breathe down their neck the whole time, but you have to make sure that it's a process of loosening the control so they can actually execute and be good at what you've hired them to do. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good observation, though, that I had another point I was going to go. But
Well, yeah, just go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I think I was talking with you about this at the last meeting, that I think I've gone too far the other way, where I've thrown people to the wolves too early, where I, had them ride shotgun and felt like, and, told them, look, I trust you, you know what you're doing. And again, the job in particular was kind of a high improvisation job. You had to learn it as you went through it. And I was comfortable with it. And then I'd call them later and they would have analysis paralysis. They'd have stumbled across a situation that had maybe three good possibilities, and they couldn't, they were blocked trying to figure out what they should have chosen. It's like, shoot, I should have
Well, and I think there's value to raising the heat and throwing someone to the wolves while you're still there. Like back when I teach people, like I took on a lot of interns in the media industry when I was doing more weddings and commercials and stuff. And I'd be like, okay, well, do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it would be in a place where I wanted to see what they could do. I was right there, ready to catch them if they fell. But I like to take a very forward approach with, all right, we're just going to go with everything you know how to do, so I know where to start with you. And then some of them just, that's where like that natural talent will emerge. Because I know for me, myself, I don't like to do a bunch of research before I just dive into something. I like to learn as I'm doing it, because some of that natural ability that I'll find out about myself, I like to kind of struggle through. Like I could look up the info and really, really, really think about it before I start, but I just like to start the sentence sometimes before I know where it's going to go.
Yeah, and my take on that is I think it really boils down to leadership style, right? I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. Like your boss who was micromanaging, I would diagnose him probably high on the S, high on the C. He's very systematic, he's very compliant, right? So that's going to be his natural leadership style. Me, I tend to just, my philosophy is I throw people to the wolves, but my philosophy around that is I think there's no better way to learn than doing, right? I want people to be earning money as quickly as possible. That's part of culture too, right? If you have a 30-day or a 60-day ramp up period where all they're doing is learning the systems and the processes, but they're not making money, you're going to lose them. So the sooner you can say, hey, let's learn while earning, right? Let's try to get a deal done as quickly as possible. I'm here to support you. And one of the best ways that I've learned to buy my time back and bridge the gap there is I just record a lot of video trainings.
Yeah.
So now I have them. I don't have to retrain people when I hire them. I've created all these videos and they can watch them and they can watch all the videos and learn from me and they can come to me with questions, but I don't have to be the bottleneck or have to micromanage them. But she touched on this. One of the cool things with the DISC test is it doesn't just teach what their strengths and weaknesses are. It also teaches the best way to communicate with that individual, how they're best incentivized and how they best learn. So not everyone's cut from the same cloth. And if you can use these personality tests to say, okay, this person's going to learn better with hands-on learning. This person, not so much. They're going to be more informational driven.
And I think that was my pitfall. I assumed people were like me that would be comfortable with a little bit of ambiguity and figuring it out, and they were just not that personality.
Right.
It wasn't the skills thing. It wasn't a buy-in problem. They were bought in. They just weren't as comfortable in that.
I do think as a leader, though, you need to be fluid. You kind of need to be a chameleon almost in some instances, because especially nowadays where you get more seasoned people, you get Gen Zs, and you get millennials, you get all this generation that might be there. You've got to be able to adapt, overcome, succeed with all of that and all of those individual personalities.
Yeah, I think it's a unique. You got to navigate through all your teammates' personalities and walk that line of it's your business. No one's going to care about it as much as you do, but still walk a line that creates a culture that encourages collaboration, encourages people to step up, and they feel like they have some shared ownership. But at the end of the day, you've got to do what's best for the company. Yeah. And sometimes that is a shift for a lot of, small business owners and then even bigger business owners of what is best for my company is focusing on what's best for my team. Yeah. And that can be it feels like a catch-22, but in reality, it's probably the most, Art Williams, the founder of the company that I work for, obviously it's a volunteer army. I'm not hiring salaried or commit, I'm hiring 1099 independent contractors. Yeah. But the culture is very much built around pushing up people. Focus on the people that you have, help them get what they want. And if you help enough people get what they want, ultimately you as the leader, as the coach, will get what you want. Now, granted, you can understand that intellectually, but understanding that from like a heart or an empath level or whatever of truly walking that out, that's the sweet spot that I think all business owners can get to. Yeah. It's just a matter of if it's, you were saying that his boss was the very structured, very S, very C. Like we're all going to speak in our normal language. We all have the individual languages or personalities. It's just a matter of what's our primary. Right. And understanding that, like, I use a color personality. So I'm very green, theoretical, analytical. I've got to walk through and I've got to understand things, but I also have to act. So I have to, when I have somebody that wants to come in and just start running, make money right away, I want to teach them before they start running. I have to be able to go, nope, we need to run right now because that's what you need.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be uncomfortable for business owners to get out of what's their comfort or familiar zone.
Yeah.
That can be a challenge sometimes that business owners need to look at, and just make sure that we're different strokes for different folks.
Absolutely.
And that brings up a great topic that we touched on at the group as well, which is, the true way to buy back your time is hiring from the top down. So, it's easy to think, well, I need a front desk person, or I need a, assistant or admin first. And again, now you're just kicking the can down the road of constantly being the bottleneck. And, the real goal is to hire someone who helps with the leadership and the growing of the team. That's, your right-hand man, a COO, right? And the COO, there's a great book called Second in Command, which teaches about the relationship between, CEO and COO. And the ideal structure is you hire your complete opposite. Your CEO, your COO should be the complete opposite personality type so that you guys balance each other out, right? So you have people like Elon Musk, who's probably high D, high I, visionary, people person. He's outward facing. He's out in the public. So his COO, you've never seen him. You've never heard of him. They're back end, right? Now you have someone like Mark Zuckerberg, who at least early in his career was very inward facing. He was the data guy, the analytical guy.
Yeah.
He needed an outward facing COO. And again, that helps bridge the gap so that, you guys can balance each other's strengths and weaknesses from a leadership perspective and a delegation perspective.
Yeah.
It's always said, staff your weaknesses. So
Yeah.
Perfect.
There was one conversation on the Joe Rogan podcast. And Joe, if you want to come on here, just let us know.
Yeah.
That's all right.
We got a chair.
Yeah, we'll open a chair for you. Maybe.
Not Joe Rogan.
There's a little
Different-
waiting list.
Yeah. Different chair. We're talking to, okay.
No, we're talking to Joe Rogan.
We've got Jamie.
If he wants to. Yeah, and you can bring Jamie. There's room on the couch too. But he was having this conversation about how you really need two people running a company, because for a person to fully embrace the potential of that company and to be so focused on the next huge thing and to strive, like Steve Jobs, for instance, he would come up with these crazy ideas and just push and push and push and push innovation. But if he just had his way with the entire company, there was no one holding the line and keeping things running the right
Steve.
way, or keeping the products they already had made selling and quality up, and the people working the right way, the factory building the actual vision, then he would have driven into the ground. But if he wasn't there and they would have just only built what they had known and never had the ambition to strive for more, then they never would have grown.
No.
Right.
So I like that you say that, hire the opposite, because whichever you are, if you don't have a partner that's running it with you, you have to live in both fields, but you have to pull away from the full potential of really going in on what your natural talents would be in either way.
And do
hire
it
that
sooner
innovator.
than later, because you would be amazed, part of the hesitancy you might see from business owners is, well, can I really afford to pay someone multiple six figures to come in and be my COO? You would be amazed at how many COOs thrive in those startup environments where they're like, hey, as long as I have a clear growth plan and I know what I can be making in 5 years, if I buy into the vision and the mission for this company, I will help you build it. And you start me here and we'll build from there. And it's like, you don't have to start someone off at 150 grand a year necessarily. As long the growth plan that we talked about is so important. Every job outline that we do for anyone we're hiring in any position, there's a 5-year plan. Yeah. And it shows them not only here's, your earning potential and the growth you can achieve over the next 5 years, but we also want to keep you long term. This is a long-term thing for us.
Right.
We see the value in you. And so,
well, it's like sorry.
No, that was it. Yeah.
Well, it's like you and Josh in the middle of last meeting. You guys had that back and forth, and he shared some of our stories. We tried hiring at the bottom. We went super, super cheap. They were making enough money to get by because it was more remote work, right? But we hired really, really, really frugal. I don't know. They were cheap, and we knew we'd have to train them. But then we ended up in a position where We had employees that we had to explain what we needed them to do, show them how to do it. It took a long time for them to do it, and then we'd have to redo it, and then we would sell it. Yeah. So we were out of money.
It's not cost
and
effective.
Our deliveries were way slower. We didn't make anything anymore because we had like 5 new people on the team suddenly, and it was slow. And we
but
were
you were
doing
still
twice as much
doing
work.
twice as much work.
Yeah, it was like
making half the money.
Made a big mistake, ran it for 6 months, and
Ruh-roh.
it hurt. It hurt.
Yeah.
And Josh brought up that fire fast type thing. Well, you need to be able to, from the hiring, that's why I like how detailed you are in making sure it's a good fit, because you'll go months where you're not happy. You're not trying to create an environment where they feel threatened, but they are, because this is not the right fit. But everyone is just, it's not good for business. It's not good for
no one
them.
knows what to do.
The company may fail, and then
Awkward
everyone loses their job anyway.
Yeah.
You have to be able to make these hard decisions if you've made a mishire, or just be able to really define what you need structurally and make better decisions with who you hire from the beginning.
Yep.
I think it's a multifaceted issue.
Well, I think when, anybody starts up a small business and you get to the point where you need employees, you don't realize the cost that's involved in all that hiring of that process. So you really, really need to value how you get it right, because it's going to cost you even more in the long run. But then again, I know in several of the meetings that we've been to, we've talked about when do we step away and have a break from it too. And you need to have that trust, as we were talking about, a partner, somebody that you can delegate stuff to, that you can step away if you need to, if there's a vacation, family emergency, anything like that, life as it comes up too. But
yeah, and that's so Brian I had like a visual in my head when you were describing this earlier. It's like, as the boss or the owners, we have to change and evolve at the same rate that we expect them to learn and grow and embrace their role. We have to be ready to let go, because it always comes up. There's those bosses that just cannot let anyone else do the actual job because it's not good enough. It's not me. So you have to be prepared as you hire somebody, as you try to get them up to snuff, to also rotate out where you're not hovering constantly, and be ready to transform into your next role, which is actually getting your money's worth out of that person.
And I think a lot of people have just a hard time with that. I mean, I know a lot of people in construction, they love construction. They'll probably never grow though, because they don't know hiring, and they're allergic to it. They don't want to think about it. I mean, I guess, Alex, I would ask you, for somebody who is in a trade or something like that, where they love the work, they'd like to grow, they really are allergic to HR, and this stuff is
hire
just,
a COO. For me, I suck at hiring and firing. I'm an empath. We've talked about this. I give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I would hire everyone. I don't do the interviewing process anymore. I look at the top 3 candidates. I watch the recording of the interview. I'm not the one on there asking the questions. It's my COO who balances me out, right? And so, again, hire from the top down. Play to your strengths and weaknesses. There's some people who are naturally going to be good at hiring and firing, and maybe even as a leader or a COO, you stay in that position and you hold ownership over that. If you're not good at it, delegate that to someone else on your team. And remove the burden from yourself, and still be the person auditing and verifying and making the final decision, but at least not being, the bottleneck, essentially.
Well, things still need to get done, but people need to embrace who they are and spend time understanding who they are. They need to fully take the time. All of us need to do it, but especially if you're running a company, right? If you embrace your talents and your skill set and your personality and what you're good at, and then find someone to fill that other role, then you're going to better benefit your company in the long run.
Like I said earlier, staff your weaknesses, but it's also lean into your strengths.
Yeah.
Like
so that you can focus on your zone of genius.
Because I spent a lot of the early part of my career coming from food service into finance and sales, of acutely aware of what I was lacking to be successful at what I was doing. And I shared this yesterday. Like, I'm stubborn and I'll just stick with it. Not everybody has that stick ability. But I spent so much time doubling down on my weaknesses, trying to improve them instead of leaning into my strengths. And if we do that same thing with anybody we bring on board to the team, or even as we're evolving through our ownership and through our, leadership journey within our companies. I think that's a bottleneck that we can fix, because it 100% focuses on us.
Yeah.
And it's hard because we're always constantly wanting to grow and get better. And so it's this weird catch-22 of like, no, there's certain things that I suck at business wise.
Yeah.
My wife will step in with that, or I'll have an office manager, or whatever it is, and be okay with that. And then sometimes you strip all the stuff off the plate to where now you are 100% freed up to go do what you do. And for a lot of people, that's exactly what they need. And for some people, it's very revealing or vulnerable,
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother conversation there. But
Well, we actually need to wrap, but does anyone have any shout outs to your own socials or anything like that you'd like to say? Any final thoughts?
No, I think it's a great concept that I think even as leaders, or as you're developing your own business or anything, you need to learn too as well. And so, like you were just saying, take a look in the mirror. If you want somebody else to do it, you better be able to know how to do it too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say, I'll play devil's advocate, is just, the counter to that is, yes, we need to adapt to everyone's learning styles and personality types, but at the same time, part of maintaining culture is protecting culture. 100%. So once you have clarity on, hey, this is our business, this is our organization, this is what our culture looks like. Someone could have a beautiful resume, they could potentially be a good fit for the job. My buddy Shai, who does multiple 8 figures a year, they're in door-to-door sales. I heard him at an event say this, and he said, most our door knockers are in their 20s. Like, that's part of our mission and our culture. We're helping empower young men to like make a living, right? And I had a 60-year-old woman who came, and she had a great background in sales. She probably would have crushed it, but she wouldn't have fit into our culture. And we had to protect her from, hey, this is our culture, you might not fit in, and so it's not a bad thing necessarily to also like have ultimate clarity on what you guys represent and work within the boundaries of that. Of course, it's guardrails, right? And you're gonna navigate that however, but I think it's important to just start with having clarity on what your vision is for your organization and protect that as well.
Yeah, spend the time to understand and define, so you're able to build it around that. I like that a lot. Brian?
Yeah. I would say for any business owner that's been listening, for the tens of people that have been listening, a quote that I'll leave you with is, the hardest battle that you'll ever fight is between your old habits and your new standards. So if you've listened to this and go like, I need to create culture, I need to hire better, it doesn't mean that your habits changed. And that battle of what you're used to, and the familiar zone, as I like to call it, that battle to get to the new standards that you've set, it's gonna be the hardest battle that you'll do, but it's totally worth it.
Coming in with the
one-liners.
The one-liners.
Yeah.
Always count on Brian.
Zinga.
Connor.
No closing thoughts here.
No closing thoughts. All right.
It's like,
Not gonna
how do
follow
you-
that.
That was deep. I don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, way to end it on the. That's a good one. Well, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for watching. We will be doing probably a podcast a week now that we have the second group going, and then the book club we're launching next week. It's going to be really exciting.
Yes.
And you guys are going to present,
Yes.
not really present, but lead the discussion.
We read books.
You read books. I'm going to see
And
if I
the
can
first
get
book we're doing
shirt.
is what, 5 Dysfunctions of a
Five
Team?
Dysfunctions of a
which is all
Team.
about company culture and
Yeah.
leading teams. So
It's going to be awesome, and we're going to be using a lot of the things from those books to help inform easier choices for topics in the future.
Yep.
Keep it fun and mixed up. So, thanks
What's the
again for
website?
watching. Oh, otcnetworking.com.
Yes.
That's otcnetworking.com. otc.com.
Networking.
we need a jingle.
I know, right? We should make a commercial. If only we had a company that could do that. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Cut.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Off the Clock. Nope. OTC. Hold on. I forgot my vocal exercises.
This is OTC After Hours, where entrepreneurs unwind, talk real, and grow together.